lead it off, we were just hoping that everybody who's present, if you could just introduce yourself in the chat, name, role, organization, usual spiel. Maybe you could share your favorite season. If it's differing from Dawn's, Dawn, I'm with you. I'll just throw that out here right now. If it feels like you want to be a little chatty, go ahead and do that. We can see who's in the room with us. And then I think that we were intending to follow that up with our large group synthesis from our strategic small group discussions. And so I'll review that in a moment a little bit more in depth for those of you that were here and were not here. And this might be a new activity for you, but still very valuable for us all. And then, Kelly, was there a change to the agenda that you were aware of? I think I'm recalling.
Yes, yeah. So we have Leslie Friedman here today. Thank you for joining us from Vermont AOE to share a little bit about early MTSS.
Awesome. And will that be after the small group or before? I forgot. We
Leslie,
didn't
do
get
you
to.
have a preference? I didn't ask if she has a preference or if you plan to stay the whole meeting, Leslie.
I can fit in wherever you would like me to.
Okay, there you have it. Thank you for being here.
Okay, we can move forward as planned then. Awesome. So then after we hear from Leslie, we'll have announcements and end of meeting pulse and pattern spotting. Hopefully that leaves us off in a really good space. Um, I think we'll get to this at the end as well, but a reminder that we're not meeting in July. And so we're hoping that this will be a good meeting for us to kind of culminate the past few information sessions and discussions that we've been having to prepare ourselves for when we return in August and for more policy conversations. All right. Great. Does it feel like I missed anything, or are we okay to smooth on into the next activity? Perfect. Awesome. Okay, I'm happy to do that then. So I will say that this activity, it's our large group synthesis of a strategic discussion that we had in small groups in April. So it is from a couple of sessions ago, and we were hoping just to kind of close the circle on it and bring it back together because we know during that activity there was a lot of discussion that happened within those groups. And we wanted to honor it with a little bit more time because it sounded like a little bit more time could be useful, and also just helping to make sure that the whole committee was aware of the conversations that happened within the groups. So I have a slide deck that I'm happy to share because I am a slide deck person because visuals are really helpful for me. If the slide deck is not helpful for you, then adjust your screen however you need to so that that's not a part of it. Because truly, the hope of this activity is the discussion that it will generate and making sure that the conversations that happened in April are still in alignment with what we're thinking right now and what's kind of occurring in the landscape right now for Vermont's children and families. So just to lead that off. But with that being said, I'm going to pop that right up here so that we can make sure. Hold on, a little clunky in my setup this morning. Awesome. So you should be looking at the large group synthesis discussion. Again, slideshow is just a suggestion. Hopefully, we're going to get a lot of discussions about this. And that it's not meant to be a formal presentation, just like a little bit of help. So adjust your screen as needed. The content again comes from the small group conversations we held 2 sessions ago. I know that Kelly had placed those links in the agenda. So if we need to, they're available to you. If you had the opportunity to review those or check those out before today's meeting, then that's fantastic. If you didn't because you're super busy, as we all are, then that's okay because I've actually structured in some time at the start of each of these focus points so that we can just actually do that together. So you can feel free to take a breather, drink some coffee, eat a little bit of breakfast, or read through those or do both as you need to. So no worries on that. Again, we're just wanting to kind of revisit these focus questions. So if you weren't here during that activity, that's okay, because our purpose today is not just to revisit every detail of what happened in those small groups, but really to kind of look at the themes that seemed to emerge in those conversations and ask ourselves, do they still feel accurate? Is there anything that feels more urgent today? and where should the committee's focus or attention, or where could the committee's focus or attention continue on moving forward. So just to synthesize and set us up to carry this information a little bit forward. We'll spend a few minutes reviewing, and then at the end, I'm hoping that we can capture kind of a few, like 2 or 3 larger emerging priorities that the committee feels that they might want to pay particular attention to when we return or as we continue through this work. Any questions, anything jumping out at anybody about that before I continue on? All right, I'm going to continue on then and assume that's an appropriate Zoom pause. Okay. So for discussion 3A, I'm going to offer you to take a few moments, please. You can review the notes from the agenda to kind of see what occurred within that conversation. I have synthesized on this slide what we were able to pull from those notes. I want to make sure that it feels accurate for the people who are in the group. And then when we get a moment, we can come back and we can do some reflection. So let me stop for a minute. Let me get a little clunky again so that I can put those in the chat for you because I realized that I had meant to. I'll make sure you have access to those. All right. So we can go ahead in the notes. I'll probably do a timer for like 3 to 5 minutes. We can look through these and then come back together and refocus on the synthesis if that sounds okay. I was able to take the opportunity in advance, like I mentioned, to pull together a little bit of a synthesis of those notes as well, particularly some of the continuing priorities that seemed to surface throughout them. And I've captured them at the top of this slide. And some of those being long wait times and workforce shortages, potentially limiting access to services, Medicaid billing and CIS challenges, creating potential service gaps, programs potentially needing stronger inclusion supports, coaching and professional development, and families and providers potentially needing clearer advocacy pathways and coordination. Is there anything that anybody from that group remembers that isn't captured on this priorities list that felt important, or anything that seems like I'm not reflecting back in terms of that group? And I think that's a pretty accurate reflection then. And so for today's purpose, we're thinking a little about looking at the notes. Um, is there anything today that feels a little bit different from the information we've reviewed? Or are using the reflective questions, are there any aspects of these challenges that feel most appropriate for committee attention moving forward? So just starting to think about where can we kind of prioritize within this goal and these notes and set our pace and our time moving forward?
Mandy, this is Cynthia, and I'm curious about the Medicaid billing and CIS challenges, and I guess I go to this one first because I feel like it's a systems level change. And if that were alleviated, could that open the door to some of the other priorities that were surfaced? I mean, it's really hard to shift workforce shortages in relation to wait times. Finding program supports, has consistently, at least in my experience as an early educator, been a challenge for early childhood programs to access, right? Supports for continued classrooms, support for kiddos. So that's the Medicaid billing is one I go to. I don't know enough about it to know if there's something this committee can do about it, but trying to figure out, I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to think logically. Is there one that by proxy pulls some others along? And could we start there?
Yeah, that's a great thought, Cynthia, in terms of like what can we clear the path with? Any other thoughts on that? Any responses from the group in terms of that? Is there anybody who had more information from that group for that? Please go ahead, Beverly.
Hi, thank you for letting me jump in. I was not part, I don't think I was part of that meeting discussion, but it does seem logical to me what Kara, what was said because what Cynthia said because um, I feel like the Medicaid billing is at the core of the uh, wait times and workforce shortages. I feel like, part of that is workforce shortages is the payment and not being able to get paid sufficiently. And I think that could get worse before it gets better. So I feel like that is really critical to understand better.
Okay. I'm hearing prioritizing a greater understanding of the impacts of this particular issue and can definitely write that down in the prioritization for this particular goal. Any other thoughts? Anything else jumping out? Thank you, Beverly, and thank you, Cynthia, for those regarding 3A or any of the notes. Okay, ready to move on to 3B and pull a priority from there? Perfect. You can do that. Do an adjustment because I'm getting a sense that maybe the slides are going to be a little too much. So I'm going to use the chat function. Let me pull 3B and we can just then focus on the notes. Those are the notes from discussion 3B in the chat right now. Really appreciating everybody taking a focus on this, particularly individuals who are not a part of this conversation. I'll do the same. We can do about 3 to 5 minutes, hopefully review what that particular group did pull from this. It's great that we got a priority from the last one, and we can hopefully take the same rhythm and see if we can get a priority from this moving forward. At the end of that, we should have like our 3 goal priorities to focus, and so that would be fantastic. So I'll start the clock right now. It looks like a large portion of this notes came down to the bottom, and so you can draw your attention to those. All right, everybody feeling like they have a gist of the conversation that occurred for the most part, some of the priorities and issues? Perfect. To make things a little bit easier, I've adjusted, and so I've added to the notes page so we can just work off of one document, the continuing priorities. Thanks for your flexibility with that. So I've synthesized here the priorities that have surfaced, and some of them appear to be access, including affordability, transportation, scheduling, and family choice, UPK and CCFAP interactions, potentially creating some unintended barriers for some families and providers potentially needing some stronger systems and navigations of support and programs that are balancing inclusion expectations with workforce shortages. And so I'll just cue into the group a little bit and wonder if anybody was here for that conversation, if that feels like a good synthesis. And do these feel relevant today still and moving forward? Getting a lot of nods. If there's anything anybody wants to add to that, or if there's anything newer that feels like it's surfacing, then definitely feel free to share.
I wanted to bring up something that I've noticed, and it is that the cap for tuition increase that exists if you're receiving CFAP is making it very challenging to be able to do some of the things that would actually increase quality in a program, such as add a position. So say you wanted to bring on somebody, the small amount that you're allowed to increase your tuition by would never allow a program to say add a new position. As you know, say they wanted to have somebody who, I don't know, would consult with their staff and work with them around children with challenging behaviors. Just say you wanted that, or you wanted to add an extra staff in a room to accommodate for the needs and all of that. there's no wiggle room with that because you're basically barely able to cover the increase in your expenses every year with that and give your staff some sort of a raise themselves.
That's helpful context, Sonia. Thank you. Um, anything else that's coming up for anybody? And then we can, Sonia, I'm going to hold that when we narrow down to our priorities as well, so we don't lose that.
I think she nailed what I was thinking too in terms of 3B4 and providing supports that ensure that programs can have what they need to provide access, affordability, and quality, and at their discretion. So if there's a need, they can make that happen. So that was actually one that I was thinking of, and she provided a concrete example. Yeah.
Great. Alignment then. Any other things jumping out? Feels like we're narrowing down on some priorities. Okay, I think we naturally answered some of those questions. And so it sounds like one particular priority for this focus area is to further explore potentially the CCFAP tuition increase and in interactions with those other needs for quality and the ability to create those expenses autonomously. Does that sound in line with a good priority for the committee? Is there anything else that anybody wants to bring up from this particular area for a priority?
Mandy, it's Cynthia again. And I was not part of this conversation, but I'm really curious about the navigation topic. So I don't know how it surfaced. There's a lot of different types of navigation in there, but is that something that this committee should at least pay attention to if it doesn't become a priority for action? Do we need to dig into that a little bit somewhere? Our systems are shifting constantly, especially under current federal and state conditions. So I just think, I don't know, I'm trying to think proactively a little bit. Do we need to pay attention to navigation in some way? And I don't have a suggestion for what that looks like. So anybody else, please jump in.
That's okay on two parts by me, Cynthia. One, if you weren't a part of the conversation, that's totally fine because the hope is that we can gather some like committee-wide thoughts around these topics as well outside of the small groups and kind of zoom back. So if there's something that's jumping out that's not on the notes, like I invite anybody to share that, please. And I certainly think like we're not into planning in this moment, so definitely I'll write just to put ideas on here that we have continuous questions about because it's really about like committee focus and prioritization. And so like no expectation anybody has the answers for these today. We can certainly focus on them and see what we can learn more about.
Hi, can you all hear me? Thanks. So as far as navigation, what just came to mind, just wanted to put out there is the legislature this year included some funding for benefit assisters, which is not particularly around childcare, but it's really meant it's a diverse group of, stakeholders that came together and put together this proposal to help folks respond to the cuts by HR 1 and Medicaid, SNAP, and things like that. So I just wonder if there's any opportunity to collaborate with those stakeholders and those partners to see if some of this work can be included in that and, in the year that they have the funding for.
That's great, Ray. Thank you. That's very helpful context. And I've added that because I think that does sound really valuable if the committee agrees. So for this particular subject, so far we have continuing to look into the CCFAP tuition increase and its interactions with the finances for educators and then the navigation topic. And then Ray, I just added your notes regarding the benefit assisters and the funding that was approved for that so that we can continue to dig into that in more detail as well. Anything else popping out to anybody for 3B before we move on to 3C? put that in the chat. Thanks, Becca. All right. 3C is in the chat. We'll do the same. I'll do about 3 to 5 minutes for you to review and peruse, make your own notes on your own thoughts if you'd like, and we can move along with the same process. All right, everybody feeling like that was enough time? Perfect. Okay, did the same thing, added some continued priorities that seemed to surface moving forward from the conversation. And so those were largely that I observed around transformation discussions and ensuring that transformation remains centered on children and families, social and emotional supports for stronger continuity through transition periods, any families potentially losing wraparound supports through those transition periods into schools as well. And then also some promising regional practices to pay attention to, and also noting regional practices vary throughout the state and continuing to pay attention to that as well. Is there anything anybody who might have been in this conversation wants to bring forward to further synthesize that? Or is there anything that's jumping out to anyone here today, regardless, that you want to check in on in terms of priorities or what's kind of jumping out at people?
I was in this group, and I'll just answer the first question, which was that while we were specific thinking about Act 166 because of its natural connection to the school districts, we were talking about preschool in general as a age and transition and moment in time.
Thank you, Becca. Helpful context.
9.2 is part of this conversation, and I just want to reiterate that I think our thinking at the time when we had this conversation, so Becca jump in and others, but was to really think critically about what are the best components of the various systems and where those are housed, and can we somehow weave bridges across that? So for things like kindergarten transition and social emotional development from early education up into the school districts, and something like nutrition services that happen really well in school districts and schools, but maybe not down in early childhood. So really thinking about where can we leverage our system's best aspects.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cynthia. What I really appreciate about that is kind of the strengths-based approach and lens that that particular venue is taking in nodding to like what is really working well, which was captured a lot in these notes as well. And so I kind of captured like really taking a deep view into some of the best components, or if like best might not be the best word, but some of those components that we feel are working really well as a committee. And then reviewing those in detail to kind of create some kind of alignment around continuity between regions and leveraging those. Beverly?
I feel like Cynthia and I are really aligned in our thinking at what popped out at us. So I had that popped for me as well. And the other thing that, but having come from healthcare a little bit and thinking about working in home health and the merger with the University of Vermont Medical Center at the time, and how we thought we could bring the things that home health did really well, which was being really patient and family centered and eyes in the household, to this bigger system who saw people for a shorter period of time and didn't see the more holistic concept of people. And that had a bumpy transition. So I keep that in mind, how hard it is to do that. If you're like trying to align systems, is to, bring what early childhood educators have to offer into this larger early education system, I think is a challenge, and also really would be amazing if we could do it. The other thing that really stuck out for me is what we measure and how we define outcomes. When I was at the legislature this session, I heard legislators asking a lot in different topic areas, like, well, how do we know what we're getting for our money? And how do we know what we're getting for our money? And, how do we know if the investment is working. And sometimes I think like in this academic world, and again, I'm not an expert at all in any way, shape, or form on this, but it feels like we're measuring like academic success and not necessarily the social emotional skill success. And so, you know, if what we're trying to do is help kids to read, I mean, maybe social emotional skills are important so they can sit down and learn. But I'm just trying to think about how we measure and what we measure, and in the context of how we show results or help people to see the value of the social emotional skill set um, aligned with the academic skill set.
Really, can I just jump in as a recently professor of education, of early childhood education? I think what we're seeing is the use of quantitative data versus qualitative data. So looking at children as a block versus as individuals. So it's very tempting to say, here are all of the children aged 3 through 5, and here are all of the attributes by which they are failing, rather than looking at one child and saying, okay, how do we wrap a unique, individualized understanding of how you learn? So I think that's, and I get it, there's a tendency to want a quantitative outcome because it's easy. It's easy to go, okay, yes, we're down 30% of this, without saying, okay, but do you have children in crisis? Do you have families in crisis? Like it's just a much bigger issue. And there actually is a lot of research. Actually, I have my early childhood research quarterly actual print magazine that I get because I like to notate it. And there's some fascinating research that's coming out that talks very closely about children's social emotional well-being linked to their P3 outcomes, and how we need to support that. And I'm really if anybody wants research stuff, please just ask Dawn, because she's got a lot. But I think that there are academic tools for us to use in saying, no, I really step back. It's not that all of the children in 3rd grade aren't reading up to level. Number one, that's US wide. That is not just a Vermont issue. And then really looking at more deeply away from the individual child not performing to how do the schools need to change in order to support those children going forward. As I always say, and I'm thrilled that Pat Fitzsimmons has used the same phrase, it's not about children being ready for school, it's about schools being ready for children. So, because when you say children aren't ready for schools, you're looking at a child in a deficit. What's wrong with this child? What has gone wrong with their education so that they're not performing? And I think that's just, we have to be really clear with folks that we don't look at any child as a deficit. That's just not humane. That's just not cool. But just wanted to jump in because it's one of my passions.
I appreciate that, Don, and I look forward to seeing the Don Rouse resource folder for all of our research that we can continuously review. Truly. I'm going to add that to the notes, actually. Great. That's great context, and I think that really helps to support a lot of what was brought forward in the conversation as well, and clarifying some, like what I really heard from you that I appreciate too, Don, was this thought that we can be continuously mindful of, which is like the scope of the challenge. What is a Vermont issue? What's a national issue? And where is our place in this committee? And kind of supporting that remediation to the best that we can. Awesome. Anything else jumping? I think there are a couple of priorities that have surfaced from this conversation that I've been hearing and can reflect back at you. Before I do, is there anything else that's jumping out at anyone regarding this particular topic or area?
Mandy, at the expense of talking again, and then I'll be quiet for a while, I promise. Going through all 3 of these buckets so far, I just have to give voice to this because I see it in all 3 buckets. There is something about our state agencies and our governance structure that is still getting in the way of doing really great systems work for children and families. And we had a lot of work done by Blue Ribbon Commission. We had a lot of work done by RAND. We've had a lot of work done by Child Trends. And so, Dawn, when you were talking about research, I just think Vermont has put a lot of thought into a governance structure that could work, and we haven't shifted anything. We still have a very siloed, multi-siloed system for young children and families to navigate and for programs to navigate. And I guess I'm going to stop there with this comment, but I do think it's something to think about. We bump up against it every single year, in every single conversation. I feel like it's the enormous, elephant that's under the blanket that we don't peek at because we haven't been able to shift it. But as a person who's been in Vermont for almost 25 years doing this work, I'm like, darn it, we have some answers. We just have to pull some levers and be really brave. And how do we do that? So I had to put that out there because I'm just really feeling it right now.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Cynthia. And I think what I'm hearing as well, and Becca, I'll scoot straight to you. I think that aligns very much with kind of this conversation we're having about like what's really working regionally and where are there still challenges regionally. And I think we could widen that scope to what you're saying as well. And I know that coming back after July, we do intend as a committee to kind of have some more like policy focused conversations. And that can be certainly something that we're mindful of in those conversations too, really thinking again about like what's working, how are we leveraging that, and finding some areas where we need to be, like you said, really brave and really thoughtful about how we're moving forward. Becca.
I'm totally going to admit that I wasn't clear on what the directions were shifting from car location to all the world. But I think if we're looking for common themes, right, in these priorities, this connection between private programs, right, and in-district pre-K programs and the rest of the pre-K to 12 system really also shares in common this workforce issue. When we're thinking about the connection between community private programs and in-district programs, people can't get out. Public school people can't necessarily get out. And I feel like it's a systems piece, to go back to what Cynthia said, versus a want. I talk to teachers all the time for pre-K and public school kindergarten. And they want to get out and they want to make these connections, but they're so overwhelmed with their own jobs that the system really fights against it. And I think that also is this like pre-K to kindergarten transition piece when we talk about this. Because we have local school control, the pre-K person at the school district level is often very unconnected from the work of the kindergarten team and the work of the kindergarten transition activities. And so when I talk like to our designees, they're like, I don't know what's happening for XYZ transition. We should, but I don't even know about it. And so I think the workforce issue enters this piece. And I think there's also this piece where like the system is butting heads against each other. It's not, to go back to what Dawn said, it's not a people issue. It's a systems connected issue. If that made any sense at all.
I think that made sense to me, Becca, and you're following the directions perfectly because really at the heart of them, they were let's have some discussion. So I appreciate everything that you're all bringing to the table for this. And something that you and Cynthia had done so naturally was kind of identifying some cross-cutting insights. So Ray, I see that your hand is raised. And please take the floor, and then if there's no more discussion, we can move into kind of like what are some intersections.
I'll be quick. Just one thing. Most of you know I'm a legislator, and I'm just coming back, so it's a little hard kind of separating the two hats. But one thing we talked a lot about in the UPK discussion this year is the regional coordinators, which I think would help in some of the conversations I'm hearing folks having right now. And some regions of the state are doing that. It's not consistent. It's not statewide, as many of you know. and with the local control and the school districts and UPK kind of being determined by each school district and supervisory union, I think having encouraging that role and formalizing it and making it more statewide might help not only achieve some consistency, but also provide a resource to families and private programs. Like, how do they fit into the system in each area of the state?
That's great, Ray. Thank you for adding that context. That's very helpful for us to keep in our minds too.
Can I just say one thing, Mandy,
Please.
to piggyback on Ray? I'm going to agree with that 100% in terms of the pre-K coordinator. Our district or whatever group we're in has done away with their pre-K coordinator going into next year. That position is the only thing that's helped bring any level of consistency at all. We partner with 8 different districts at this point. It is an absolute nightmare going into this fall. There is no other word for it. And I know programs literally pulling out at this point. They're like, we're not doing this. Like, it takes up so much administrative time to deal with 8 different districts that are all doing everything absolutely 100% different, from a contract to payment to attendance to, I mean, everything about it has been a nightmare coming into the fall. There's no other word for it. And when we had this person, we actually had things like down. Like, it's not an easy system no matter how you slice it. But we had it down, right? We had things unified, attendance was done, invoicing was done the same, like everything was done in a way that made sense and streamlined it as much as possible. We're literally back to square one. And we really had to question whether we wanted to do it this year. And we've done it since the minute you could do it as a private program. But I have to tell you, it's requiring so much administrative time for somebody going into next year that, we'll see whether we continue after this. Like, it's not my desire not to, because, I want this for families, but oh my gosh, like, we have to figure that out.
And I think, sorry to talk again, but I think what that's going to do, to Sonia's point, is that it's just going to reduce access, right? Because there's going to be so many programs that are either, and your program is really well established. You have a lot of great systems in place, Sonia, but like, you think about a smaller program in part of the state that doesn't have and is dealing with, 6 to 8 different school districts in the region. They're not going to be able to provide the UPK hours, and the school districts will also not have obviously that option because they are either too small or have made a decision to partner out. So it's just really going to impact. And I don't know what the answer is right now. Obviously, this last session we didn't have a proposal, and I don't know how we would think about the funding to kind of fund a position like that, and kind of when thinking about the overall transformation of education, which includes UPK. It's not just K through 12, it's UPK through 12. Thinking about like the timeline of that and how do we align some of these changes with that and kind of make sure we achieve some consistency and streamlining for the private programs.
Awesome. So helpful in context. And I think something that I'm hearing from both of you within this conversation that I loop back to like what I heard from Dawn is that true importance of both sets of data, that quantitative data, the qualitative data, like truly understanding the experience of what's occurring. So to better support monitoring and really understanding some of those like unintended consequences and remediation of that.
I'll say though that it's also about, again, the siloing of systems. It almost, this is, I won't even say it. It becomes like public education versus private education at some point, right? people making the decisions regarding to do away with a coordinator and to fund or not fund a coordinator haven't asked any private program what that impact might be. Like, and haven't talked to us about how might this be funded? Like what the struggles they're having are with the funding. Like there's been no discussion. It's like we're just an addition, right? We're not a partner, we're an addition. And so we're an afterthought for them. And I don't mean to be that crass, but that is how it has always been. And I don't know how we bridge that gap. I'm happy to work with anybody, sit in any meeting and say, hey, like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Like, let's see what we can do. I mean, I'd rather put some funding if I had it toward helping pay for, like, rather than lose that and cost me 3 times as much, but nobody's asked us that. You know what I mean? Like we can truly be partners at the table. So somehow I'd like to see how we work on that and bring those two systems together. Because I think until we do, we're going to play this game. Like the legislature is going to push and push for us to try to help us get this mixed delivery system, which in my opinion is the best way to go. But that doesn't matter much in the end if we actually aren't working truly as a partner. They do contract with us as such, but we are not treated as such, if that makes sense.
What that looks like. Thank you, Sonia. I think we've clearly identified a priority. And so I've added that to the list. I think that it's a great area. It sounds like there's a lot of conversation around this and a lot further action steps that can be taken and review from the committee. So very happy to keep that on the priorities list. And Sonia, invite you to any meeting that like you can get into so that we can have those conversations as well. Something I've tracked because it did come up a few times is like, what are the through lines through all of these areas? So I just added them into the chat and I can share a synthesis document that we can put out with the notes after this conversation for these areas as well so that we can keep track of those. But truly family experience, workforce capacity, regional variation, and infrastructure and implementation came up pretty frequently in addition to family voice and equity and continuous improvement. And so those are through lines through all of these areas. So it helps to, I think, support what our priorities could be moving forward within the scope of this committee in terms of better understanding the issues and then potentially like providing any recommendations to address for those. Something else that I've tracked through this conversation is what are potential continued priorities or at least areas for further information gathering for this committee, which was the goal of this activity. And so I'm so glad for the conversation that occurred that I was able to kind of pull these out. And so I'll just I know we have just like a moment or so. I'm going to share those in the chat just so that you can look at those because it will probably be more effective than me reading them at you. But if we could just take a moment to look at those and kind of give us a thumbs up if they're feeling like we're in alignment with the conversation or what the committee believes are priorities. This is going to really help, I think, us in planning so that we can make sure that we're holding these as priorities in our planning and making sure if there's information gaps, we're focusing on who are our partners, where can we bring in partners to get those, and how can we strengthen those areas. So without further ado, I'll put them right in the chat. Again, we can share them again after. We can relook at them continuously, however the committee would like to use them to move forward with them and maintain them in our priorities. But really thinking about like assessing, you know, what those increases could potentially be creating, or the caps, I should say, exploring regional services, reviewing effective family support strategies. I'm just reading the first few words so that we can kind of consensus or narrow those down, and aligning those measures of success. Go ahead, give them a read through. Let me know if there's anything that feels like it's missing or that wasn't represented fully, and then we'll wrap up and move on to our next steps. And if you've read and they look good, go ahead and throw me a thumbs up just so that I know we're ready to move on. Kelly, you something to add? Oh, just a
Nope,
high
just
five.
looking for the thumbs up.
We'll accept that as a high five and we'll take
Yeah,
it.
high five.
Awesome. I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up. I'm not hearing a lot of dissension right now. That's great. I think there's a lot of alignment in this group to start. I just want to share a final appreciation for everybody coming into this to engage in this activity, especially since we had a little bit of gap between these conversations and knowing that not all of you were present for those conversations. So thanks for having super loud, brave, and thoughtful voices, regardless of where you were coming from today into this activity. I really appreciate it. I think this is wonderful, and we're going to be able to do a lot with these focus areas moving forward. And then I think that's going to prepare us for our transition into our guest speaker, if you're ready.
Of course, now this is when my dogs have decided to let me know that anything and everything is walking in front of my house. So anyway, I just wanted to say, first of all, I'm Leslie Friedman. I'm from the Agency of Education on the early ed team. I appreciate all the discussion this morning. It's been really great to just sit back and listen. And I guess I can say there's a lot of understanding, and everything you guys are talking about is definitely concerns with our early team, and what the future looks like for early education and our early programs here in Vermont, and for what that looks like for our families and children too. So the discussion is definitely appreciated what you guys are doing. So I will say, so I know I'm here to talk about our early MTSS, like what that path looks like. We're definitely making some new changes and some new stuff's happening. I do want to give you all a few updates. We've had Pat Fitzsimmons, who was our interim. She's now officially our state director of early education. She is our person now in there's 3 people on the team right now. So it's myself, Michelle Johnson, and Pat. And Michelle and I are very excited that Pat is on and staying with us. We're definitely still doing the work that we're doing. But there's also, I think we're going to start leaning towards some different things when it comes to supporting our programs and the children and families, and what things really look at what's going on in early childhood, and that actually sort of leads into the big project that's been going on right now, which is the portrait of an early learner. I'm not sure if people are familiar with Pat a few years ago put together something called a portrait of a graduate. And now that she's come to us, she's like, we should probably do something about portrait of an early learner. So that's really exciting that we are starting to work with that. I know that I know Dawn is working with Pat with this piece too, which is really exciting, that we're having people from different places. So just a quick thing, and I'm going to read it because I don't want to miss anything, but a portrait of an early learner and educated in education. It's going to be developed for a visual and a actionable framework. It sort of describes the way young children will engage with the world, highlighting the skills, the approaches in learning, like curiosity, collaboration, persistence, resilience. So it's really honoring that development and emphasis of importance of diverse experiences, relationships, environments that support growth. So it's sort of serving as that North Star that guides teaching, learning expectations, systematic changes, and ensuring that early education focus on the holistic development of children. And I think the key word there is that holistic development. We're so into numbers and the data, we all want that, but I think we're going back to really looking at that piece of like play and how we can help and support children, but also give direction for the families, and really look at the child as a whole. So like I said, there's a lot of collaborating going on right now with that. I know that there's a timeline and if I probably share this, I probably have like kicked myself by doing it, but I think the goal is for next year for the kindergarten conference to have something to roll out. And I think it's a really great it'll be a great resource and a great focus. I know that the portrait of a graduate is something that school districts have taken and sort of personalized for their schools. So I think the same thing will happen with this portrait of an early learner. But it's just really exciting work that's happening right now. Thanks, Dawn. You're right. So Beth Trzanski, Renee Kelly, and Dawn are working with Pat right now. So, and then it will grow into some into bigger groups and what that looks like and conversations. So, it's really exciting work that's happening. Some other things, just quick updates. I was asked to share that there is going to be, we have an inclusion coordinator that we did have. That was Amy Murphy, who has left. So over on the early childhood special ed area with Katie McCarthy, they do have made an offer. And so hopefully that's going to go through. So we will have that inclusion coordinator back on the early team. And there's a bunch of other new people that we keep getting new people coming in. So there's some really good stuff happening here at the AOE that we're excited for, and good supports that are going to be available to everybody out in the early childhood education field. So, and so the big thing too, reason why I was asked here is for the early MTSS. We're really excited. We have signed a 5-year contract with Pyramid Model Consortium. And with that 5-year contract, we are having different cohorts that will be working to, that will be applying over the next few years for 2-year pieces. It could look a little different. We're coming up with new ideas as we go. It's sort of like we're building this as we go to try to support programs that are really already implementing early MTSS. So we have programs that have applied for this first cohort that are repeats, that have done this before. We also have people that are brand new that really have not a lot of knowledge or background, or they're really starting over again because maybe they did do early MTSS and pyramid model a bunch of years back. And now their staff is completely different. Their program looks different. So we're really working with a really big spectrum of what that looks like for experience. So we're signing on coaches right now too. So we've got a good number of local coaches, and then we're also having people coming in from around the region that will be helping us, which is really exciting. Our big piece too is the structure that is going on in programs. It's not just the trainings for the people, the educators and support staff. We're looking at helping these programs build leadership teams. So when they move through these pieces, there's a leadership team that will help them, work through the processes and figure out next steps. And then once they have moved out of, say, their cohort, they'll be able to carry on and continue the work. So it will be a long-term thing. It's not just because their time has done with a coach or what have you. They have their own supports in the program too. So that's really exciting. As of right now, we have 60 programs that have signed on. And we, some of them actually are not UPK programs, which is even more exciting. We are not turning them away. We're trying to figure out different ways to support programs that are not necessarily our UPK. But what we can do to help them in providing information and ways that they can get coaching, and even just starting off with some of the trainings, the modules, looking at that. We also will have, like I said, we have our programs, with some knowledge and some without knowledge. And we're looking at maybe having a transition. So a program will join our cohort, but at a different level. They may not be ready for all the things that happen right off in the beginning, but then we will actually move them up to a different level. So we're doing like almost beginner, entry level supports, seeing if this is really something that they are able to do in their programs, or want to do, or do it at a different level. And then we can go from there. We're also excited to say that we have some family child cares. I think we've had 2 sign on too. So that's a whole other view and a whole other different way of coaching that we're excited to put into what we're doing. We have, and I would say we are statewide. There's definitely a good broad look of our whole state that people are putting in. We have, just a really great, exciting bunch of people. And this will also, we're going to be pulling people in to do community of practice calls. So everybody will be able to work with each other if they want to do that. And then we're hoping to continue those after they have completed their cohort time. So we will continue this work afterwards. So even when the 5 years is done, we're still going to be providing resources and areas to learn together, and hopefully some more trainings as we go on after that too. So that's really exciting. I could talk about it all day. So it's just good, exciting work. Our team, I'm really excited for our team too at the AOE. We've got some really great stuff, and this is a really great big foundational piece for our team to be working on. We also just had a mini retreat last week with the state leadership team. We got together in Waterbury, and there was a wide variety of people sitting at that table. We had representation from CDD. We had a private program. We had BBF. We had Northern Lights representation. We had educators and UPK coordinators. And if I'm forgetting somebody, please let me know. But it was just an exciting group, and it was a really nice way to get going again and really bring people together and have an understanding of, or beginning to understand, what this process will look like. So there's a lot of work being put into this, and we're really, really excited of what that looks like. We're very lucky to have Pyramid Model Consortium. While there's a contract, we know that piece, but these people are very dedicated, and the time and effort that they are putting in to supporting us is huge. We can send emails and text at all hours, and we get a response from somebody. So it's really exciting. So it's just a really great thing. Oh, thanks, Becca. You're right too. So I want to say that there was some special ed and general ed stuff too. That piece. So anyway, but yeah, so I could, like I said, could talk all day. But it's exciting work, and there's a lot of collaboration going on, between different agencies and different groups around the state. So we're hoping not just with this early MTSS piece that's going on, but in other areas of support and stuff will really hopefully open some more doors and be more available for our state and all of our early childhood educators and the people that work in early childhood. So it's just exciting. And if there's time for questions, if anyone has a questions, I can try to answer. I don't know if I just opened up a door I shouldn't have, Mandy.
No, you're good. I have a question just in terms of history in past cohorts that you've had. Was there a limit previously, and this time it seems like it's pretty open, no one will be denied?
So I feel that looking back on it, it was more of our programs that were in monitoring. So the people that had that were needing supports of some sort were really not pushed, I shouldn't say that, were automatically put into into some coaching or resources that were needed to help them strengthen their programs and what they were doing. This time it's definitely, we haven't said to any program, you need to do this. you know, and me being in programs and being able to see what's going on, and, you know, the needs of programs and the supports and the fact that there's no money, you know, for programs to be doing this. I did personally invite programs and say, or suggest that this is a really great opportunity. So there's that kind of thing going on, but there's nobody that's required this time to be, you know, into it for a monitoring period at all. Yeah, all 60 of those programs, they applied on their own, which is really cool.
Right. That's a big number.
Mhm.
Mhm. Go ahead, Beverly.
Oh, was that me?
Go
Um,
ahead.
Hi. I may have missed it if you said this earlier, but the team that's sort of coordinating this, per our earlier discussion where we're talking a lot about how do we take some of the social emotional skills strengths of early childhood educators and bring it into the K through 8 model, and also how do we like have that alignment more, that transition more smoothly working together. I'm curious, like on the steering committee, is this a place where there's a mix of ECE leaders and the K through 8 community guiding this work together?
No, this is just the early childhood, so just our pre-K programs, but that is a concern that has come up and something that we have been working or trying to work on for years, going back when there was the Vermont MTSS. So there is work we're trying to pull in more K1, at least K1. We really are focusing on where the VELs are. So the VELs are that birth to grade 3 kind of thing. So sort of that's where our focus seems to be. But I do agree with what you're saying that like there really needs to be that extended piece of going into like
Yeah.
8th grade. Supports, like we're talking about universal support. So that should be something that we're seeing across the board. Things may look a little different for a pre-K child versus a 5th grader when it comes to those supports too. So the focus is right now with this that's coming from PMC is early childhood. But there is a big discussion going on too right now at the AOE of what it looks like for K through 12 for MTSS and where it's going and what that looks like. So that is something that is being discussed. It's not a forgotten piece at all, and we do
Well,
realize what needs to happen.
I don't think that was quite exactly what I was getting at. Like, I think I was getting at more like not the people participating, but the people sort of organizing, coordinating, managing it. Are there people from AOE and people from CDZ working together?
The AOE and CDD is working together. Where there's that piece at the table, but there's nobody that's from like the K-12 realm. But what Becca said too is in chat that we are looking to, there's different people, different agencies, different people that we are looking to pull in to be on the state leadership team from different groups like mental health, but and also they are sorry, I'm reading the chat as it's going along. We are looking to have the maybe special education coordinators, maybe bringing in some educators from like kindergarten first too. So that's a piece right now that is happening. Because representation like is a big thing. We really want, there's a small group that's sitting at the table, and as we started to talk about at our meeting last week, all the other agencies that are sort of connected with us in different ways, we found that there was a huge number of people that were not sitting at the table that are important. And there is that education piece, but there's also right now we're seeing a big thing with mental health, and we really needed to have some mental health people at the table. It just goes much broader than just that education and CDD piece too. It's huge.
Thanks. I just see this as an opportunity, a real opportunity, given the discussion we had this morning, to bridge, to address some of the conversation, to bring people from both CDD and AOE, and as you were saying, maybe other areas too, together, like working collectively on something that might relate to outcomes and how we talk about that and to alignment of systems. And so it just seemed like this seems to me like a real opportunity.
AOE and CDD, we are together at the table. Like they definitely are members at the table. Like Chris and Leslie both are there. So we're looking at, also that early intervention piece with Leslie. So that's huge. But I think in the AOE, there's myself and Pat Fitzsimmons were at the table too, and Katie McCarthy, who's our early childhood special ed manager. I think it's important too that to find somebody that's above that early childhood into that K piece, into that curriculum, into those content areas, maybe pulling some of those people into, and that's a great suggestion, and I can definitely bring that back to the team.
Bev, I'll just add that within the PDG grant, AOE, the AOE, oh my God, Andrew and Amelia in the workforce development sort of path, and I and Helen are working on a early childhood apprenticeship, a licensure apprenticeship program. So I'm meeting with Andrew and Amelia. I like once every 2 weeks. Vermont AOIC is being brought into that. So there are a number of intersections that are happening in collaborations. They're just, at least for the UPK licensure piece, we're going to launch it like this summer and recruit. So I feel good about the intersections starting to happen. And of course, I'm working with Pat. So I think that there's great communication happening.
I agree. There's a lot of good things happening between CDD and AOE, and all sorts of different areas for early childhood, not just the early MTSS piece. So there's a lot of exciting stuff happening, and I think the future is looking really good with what's to come. I'm excited. I'm excited that Pat's our person now too. So that's a huge piece too.
Any other questions for Leslie? Anything popping up? Awesome. Leslie, thank you so much for your time and for that information.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the work you guys are doing.
Amazing. I think that was a great point, Beverly. Great connections to the activity this morning, or earlier, I should say as well, although it always feels like hours ago, sometimes minutes to me. Okay. I think unless anything else is coming up for anybody in this moment, that leads us into just inviting anybody with any announcements or resources that they might have to share with the group today.
I can go. Hi, everybody. Rose Morrison at First Children's Finance. Jen had to hop off, but I just wanted to share with everybody that we are in the midst of scheduling a startup childcare business boot camp. We're going to be scheduling it. It's for September. It's going to be 3 evenings, the 16th, the 23rd, and 30th. We will be having that on the Northern Lights training calendar. But one thing is, if you happen to know of an area that really is struggling with finding childcare, please reach out to me, Jen, Sam Collins, because Sam and I are doing the training together. to give us an idea. Maybe we can advertise in that area a little bit more. We're really trying to see, those little pockets that maybe we can get a family home in or something, just for making care available to those areas that kind of get missed because they're in the middle of somewhere. So that's it.
I can just do a quick, not very exciting, but also exciting update. So we, those of you who are familiar with the CDDIS system and understanding the phases of the build, phase 2 has been awarded. We are in contract negotiations with the individual, and that will be the licensing and workforce registry portion of the 3 steps of CDDIS. So that's very exciting. We also have undergoing something called Mahara, which will become the portfolio system with 4 stars. So it's going to become a true portfolio system where folks can upload into the portfolio system. We're going to be trying to make that a little more, not a jot form. we're trying to move into the 20th century, folks. And CIS through the PDG money is starting to get a new, not the database or the program everybody is waiting for, because PDG is only a 1-year pot of money, but the access interface for the Medicaid data. So that's going to be an internal help to processing and supporting programs. So that's, I think, I'm not sure if it's been awarded or if it's already starting. I have to, there's a lot of emails from being on vacation. So that's exciting. I know it's not but it's great things behind the scene. Things are moving. Oh, and the fingerprint project is also moving. I think the RFP is out or has been awarded. Again, I have to go back down, but all things chugging behind the scenes.
I can offer an
Progress is
update.
important.
Oh, sorry, Mandy, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask if there was anything else. Go ahead.
Sure. So I can offer an announcement as well. It's actually from our Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, but they just put up on their website that they've awarded about $1 million in Farm to School and early childhood grants. And one of that I really wanted to highlight was the local Food for Schools and Childcare grant went out last fall, but for this summer. And $200,000 was awarded to 105 early childhood programs to access local food for their programs. I will say that the request for proposal was $375,000, almost double what the agency had to award. So I just wanted to highlight the support coming from another state agency for early childhood programs to access food for children and families in their meal services in their early childhood programs. So congratulations if any of your programs received it. And while this was one-time funding this year, we are advocating that this become a more permanent part of the grants program through the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets.
Amelia, please.
Hi, everybody. Just a couple of updates. So right now in the Northern Lights calendar, you won't see fundamentals offered, and sometimes people get worried, and they shouldn't get worried. We have 5 sections being offered in the fall. They will be in our calendar in August, so spread the word about that. We have our equity and inclusion tool that is for sponsors of professional development. If you want to get your hands on that, just let me know. And also, we're going to have a training with the developer of this tool, Arlen Paletta, fantastic trainer, very smart person, and we'll be offering that in the fall. So if you're offering professional development and you want to have a tool and understand how to use it, not just for the training itself, but also in hiring somebody or doing observation of the trainers that you are coordinating, then this tool is going to be very invaluable for you. And we just had our professional development summit at Northern Lights. It was very successful. And I am right now in the part of the year as the curriculum manager starting to look into the fall for designing content. And if you have anything that you're saying, boy, we need more trainings about this is the time. Well, you can always reach out to me about that, but this is a really good time to reach out to me. And then the last thing I want to say is that we will be doing our community of practice facilitation training, which is something that we ask people to take if they are going to be offering communities of practice. And it is the kind of training you take and you say, I thought I knew all the things. And then you take it and you're like, whoa, I didn't know all the things. And it is done in with a lot of discussion forums. So it's an enriching time that you get. How often do we get to do this? Speak with other professionals in the field, doing the same kind of work you're doing, getting excited about turning some of your trainings perhaps into communities of practice. So I'll put my email in the chat if you'd like to reach out to me with any training ideas. Thanks.
Awesome. Any other announcements to share? Anything else anyone wants to bring forward right now?
I'll just remind, I'm full of things as they come to me. The Reggio conference will be here in two weeks. So that's going to be very exciting. It's sold out. So we expect 250-ish folks to come to Winooski to enjoy this internationally sort of once in a lifetime in Vermont experience. And then I believe the exhibit will open officially July 1st because they need to have time to sort of clean and get it ready. And I do believe through Rivet, there's a possibility of like scheduling guided tours through the exhibit for individuals for PD. I think it's PD hours. I would check with Amelia. I'm pretty sure it's PD. So get ready for a summer opportunity that's really special. It's almost here.
Love those bright spots that you guys have shared already. Anything else popping up for anybody in his announcement? Okay. Anything that came up in the meeting today? Just a pulse for pattern spotting in terms of like bright spots, challenges, or any gaps, anything that we heard today that we want to highlight at the end.
S214 passed the legislative session, making it possible for preschoolers in Essex to get childcare in New Hampshire paid for by the Vermont UPK program. It's, good things come in little packages, right?
Thanks, Beverly. They sure do. Anything else? Any other bright spots popping up for people? I love the bright spots. We spent a lot of time thinking about like other areas this morning, and so I'm kind of trying to lean towards the light, but will not rebuke any other conversations that come up.
I will say, I for all what I'm saying, when we're looking at where the gaps still are, for our part, since July of last year, we have 3/4 of our parents receiving CCFAP funding. And that's huge because we had like 26 families. We now have like 160 families, like huge amount, just getting them that have, helping them. We've been able to give away over 50,000 in scholarships with the way the funding stream works. So, you know, affordability has become a much bigger thing for people, and I feel like we're closer for sure than we were to true affordability for folks. We still have some that are, obviously if we're scholarshiping them, they're still struggling, but which is part of why I want that cap thing addressed, because that would also help that too. But regardless, that to me is a very bright spot, that affordability piece. I know it's still an issue, but it's nowhere near as the issue it was, at least for my program.
We have to highlight progress. It must happen that way.
Yep.
Amazing. Two very bright spots. Anything else jumping out at anybody as we conclude our time today?
I was just going to say, I think we often say this and think it, but you can never say it enough. Like, particularly with the conversations we've had today, having all these different people on the call that touch this system is really apparent. And makes me really hopeful that like work across systems, which to me was the theme of today, can really happen and occur.
I also would love to do a bright spot for Mandy because she is giving the best Zoom pauses I've ever seen. Those are not easy to do. And Mandy, you just organize these, run these meetings so well. Thank you.
I'll appreciate that very much, Amelia. I've been working on the Zoom pause since 2020 itself. And so, again, we have to highlight progress. Thank you.
I will echo that really great facilitation of going through the group notes and giving time and space for that conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was so meaningful, I think, though. I'd have to shine that back to the group because again, it was tough, especially if you weren't here. So being present and available for that is huge. I could not have dragged anybody through any conversation, right? You guys have to participate in it in order for it to be valuable and meaningful as well. Thank you. Whoa, guys, you're making me blush over here. All right. We can end on that note. Unless there's anything else, I won't overspeak, but if there is nothing else, if there is jump out, if not, Don, Kelly, Anna, let me know if it feels like anything is missing before we wrap up, and then we can move on.
I would just note a reminder that we will not meet in July. Mhm.
Awesome. Yes. No meeting in July. Looks like it's on the agenda. We'll resume on the August 13th date and are prepared and ready to have, it sounds like a fair amount of information, some pretty robust opportunities for the agenda coming around in August. So we'll all look forward to that. Great. If nothing else, I appreciate you all. I love seeing everybody's faces this morning and thanks for hopping in.